it's not just like this perfect little pattern. It takes work. It takes breaking things down. It takes forgiveness. It takes resilience. It takes showing up and risking. I think that's why vulnerability is so hard for so many people, because you're going to be stripped away of a lot of your old patterns. And it's scary sometimes. Just do it.
My name is Mia Togo, and this is the Seeker and Sage podcast.
Back at it again. Getting a little deep on this episode. Getting a little deep on this episode of the podcast this week. Y'all know I'm all about some self-help. I'm totally all about going there, and specifically over just, the last few months where whatever is actually sticking for me is sticking for me, and I'm seeing change and growth, and it's pretty cool. Well, Miss Mia has been doing this work for quite a while, and whether you want to call it like shadow work or, the stories in your head, there's so many different ways to look at it, right? Some people do therapy, some people go to yoga, some people, there's so many ways that you can go about it. And the cool thing is there's no wrong way to do it. I think that shadow work is pretty incredible. I actually got the book that Mia recommends in the show just to kind of check it out. I haven't really dug into it fully, mainly because I am still in the middle of the 4 agreements for book club happening on March 27th. So I've kind of just been like focused on that. But that's going to be one of my other books, is to check out her shadow work. Anyway, I'm really excited that she's on the show because this is important stuff. We've all been through a lot. So it's nice to be able to, express ourselves and everything that we've gone through in a way that makes sense for us when we're ready, in a space that's ready for us. And before we start the show, Saturday, everybody, is the 20th, March 20th. Yvonne Kingsley and I are doing a free Pranayama workshop. It's going to be a 1-hour live class. We're just getting together, going to introduce you on we're calling it a practical pranayama. So we're going to teach you about some yoga breathing and why it's good for you, how it helps reset your nervous system. And if you're a yoga teacher and you take the class with us, you actually get continuing education credits. So you can sign up on my website. I'll put a link down in the show notes. And give us some love on iTunes. I love doing this. I love sharing this show to everyone out there. And the more that you review us, the better. You can always do a little donation as well, so that we keep this show, commercial free and all that fun stuff. And we'll leave the support link down in the show notes. All right, everybody. Here is Mia Togo. Mia, our old studios are gone. What are we going to do?
Danny, we have to adapt. We have to adapt and pivot. That's what we do, right?
No, this is bullshit. I want to kick and scream and have someone take care of shit for me. I'm done.
I hear you. And I do kick and scream. If we go right into shadow work, that's part of my rinsing. I actually do physical rinsing as part of my shadow work when my stuff comes up. So I hear you.
I've heard shit tons about shadow work, and I actually have, oh my gosh, I could go run to my bookshelf right now and look. There's a book on shadow work, and I feel like maybe Chopra was involved in it.
Okay.
There's one on shadow work that it's just been sitting there. I got to look into it, but I don't really know that I get the entire concept of what shadow work is. Although my assumption is it's kind of just dealing with your demons, right?
Yeah, it's referencing the Jungian philosophy, but I think the work goes way back to my own personal experience when I was dealing with my own struggles and inner demons, and I looked like I had a really great external picture. This was back in my 20s, but down deep inside, I felt like a piece of shit. I felt worthless, all of that stuff. So there was a disconnect, and so I could create a great, external image, if you will, because that was the way I got validation and I could achieve and look like I had it together. But inside, I felt like I was falling apart. So there was a disconnect. And I think that we have to go to our unconscious patterns that develop, honestly, usually childhood, because we're socialized, we get programmed. To think and feel a certain way. And the thing is, it's not bad or wrong. It's just, this is what happens. And there's so much discussion right now, especially about racial reckoning and unpacking. And that's the work I've been doing. Honestly, for like 25, 30 years, unpacking, decolonizing, and really starting to rinse and process where that is held in my own psyche so that I can stop creating from the place that I actually know. It's deep work. It's no bullshit.
Yeah. But I love the drama. Like, why? No, I'm kidding.
I did too, my dear. I used to love the drama because I'm a fiery person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I feel it. When you're saying, as we start to think about like unpatterning and, just kind of our belief systems, I think is what you said. But
Yeah.
are we going to like, would we equate it to like vasanas and like samskaras?
Yeah. I mean, look, we all born into the world that we're born into, whether it's, the family patterning, it's our culture, the time when we're born, and all of those things. And this is all going into our system. So we didn't think it, we felt it. We started making connections before we even had languaging. So this is where we are starting to create the fundamentals for our belief systems. And so to unpack them and deprogram them, it takes more than just a mental awareness, which is a great place to start, because my background, I studied psychology and went to UCLA. That was definitely my desire to uncover and understand some of my really dysfunctional and sometimes very destructive behaviors. And so what I felt and what I learned is a lot of that. I understood it so much, which made me feel even more nuts sometimes. I'm like, well, I get it. I understand this mentally, but a lot of times it's it's a feeling issue. And where a lot of us are not taught how to navigate our feelings, not taught how to navigate fear. And in the yoga world too, that comes up. It's like, be fearless. And that's so much spiritual bypass stuff.
I can't sometimes with the yoga world. I just like, it's
Totally.
like the literal, like just never ending eye roll. Like I can't sometimes. And people are just like, just let go. Like that's actually not how it works. You have to process, you have to unpack, you have to excavate, you have to make sense. You have to bring into awareness, you have to get to know it, you have to befriend it. And then maybe you can move forward with it. But it's not just this big breath of, letting it go and calling it a day. That's really just putting a pretty little bow on it and sending it out the door.
Absolutely. My whole thing is you got to rinse your shit, like when you're triggered and off center, you're in a time travel. You are no longer in present time. You're kind of like in the back of your brain, like the reptilian brain. And so we're in a fear, a lot of us have this fear patterns, and a lot of us have trauma. If we haven't experienced trauma in this lifetime, our parents have experienced it. And that's what I really learned about trauma is epigenetics and where I was carrying it. So I had to find ways to rinse my fears and my overwhelms. And I had to learn how to process what was underneath it and really own it. Like you said, you have to own that shit, and it takes work and it takes commitment. And sometimes people say to me, they're like, you're so light and airy, but I can also go down deep, and I do a lot of work of unpacking my stuff. And I mean, it's intense, but I feel like the deeper you go and the more willing you are, the more courageous you are to take risks in life, because you're not afraid of people taking you down, because you're like, oh, I can own that. I can own that. That's mine. And no one can take that away from me. Right.
Where did your, is there like I don't even know. Is there like a shadow, like not maybe training? I don't know, not training. Is there like a shadow society?
Should we start a shadow society?
I think we should. Wait, first off, everyone, you heard it on the podcast. We started it. We're coining it. Trademark is done. We're good on that one.
I love it. The secret shadow society.
Let's. We just go drink cheap wine and talk about our feelings.
That works. I'm all about that. I love it.
So good. No, but is that's so good. I just, the inquiry in my head is like, yeah, you had your psychology background, but when you started to, I guess, the terminology of shadow work, and it was there like something that you trained with, or someone that you studied with, or something that this is kind of you've brought into reality on your own, or like what are the origins and how did it become a thing for you?
Well, it became a thing because I think I was in my 20s, and I was doing my work. I was seeing a therapist at the time, and then I was seeing my boyfriend. Well, that was a long time, but my ex-boyfriend and I were having a lot. He was, an addict, an alcoholic, and so were his brothers, and I wasn't. And I'm like, well, we just had all this trauma and talk about. There's so much drama and trauma, and so we started seeing my teacher. She is my main teacher. Her name was Mona Miller. She was killed in a car accident about 11 years ago, and the work I did with her was everything. And I always say I feel like it really saved my life, and I don't mean literally, but I mean emotionally and energetically. The work I did with her was about rinse. I mean, we actually did physical rinsing, and I still do it. I mean, I literally have a pillow and a base. It's like a tennis racket. So when I feel my they overwhelm or a disconnect or a trigger, I have a way to release it in a constructive way. And then I can process what is underneath that. And so her book that she wrote, which is very impactful in the work I do, because I've been a life coach for 10 years now. After she passed away, I started doing her work and what I've learned through it. And it was called it's called invisible warfare. And the idea is if we want visible peace in the world, and I think most of us do, we have to heal the invisible wars that we carry inside. And she used to say, long before this COVID pandemic, it's like we all have a sort of like a flu. And the thing is, we catch the flu and we can be really pissed off and like, fuck you for giving me the flu, because sometimes it just sucks. But the end of the day is that the flu is inside of you and you have it. You have to own it and heal it. So it's a way to rinse off like, sucks and I don't want to have this flu, but I do. And then process, where is it living inside of me? And then what is it teaching me? There's a lesson. And if I can learn that lesson and heal that flu, I actually get to own that powerful gift. So it's a process, but it takes courage and it takes work. And so I started doing that work with her long before I ever started practicing yoga. And in fact, I was a professional dancer like in the 80s and 90s. So I was kind of in my body already. So when I started practicing yoga, I really wasn't into it, to be honest. It seemed a little airy-fairy.
Sure.
I was like, it's too airy-fairy for me. And I'm very much in my masculine in that way, but I'm also very much in my feminine. So I felt like the yoga at the time, until I actually started practicing at YogaWorks. And that's when I was like, ooh, I like this, because the smart sequencing and the alignment detail, I really resonated with that, because as a dancer, like, well, this just makes sense. Like, you just don't throw a bunch of shit out there. Because I feel like sometimes yoga is just like, it's a yard sale. And like, let's throw every pose out there. I'm like, no, I'm just feeling confused right now. So that's why I started practicing there. And then, and just teaching and learning to integrate the work I had done with Mona and the philosophy, like really understanding and embracing. I love the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. I love, the Kleshas and Pradapaksha Bhavanan. And really there's so much of that psychology in there too, like flipping things and understanding and getting to the root cause of our pain. Because if we don't, we're going to suffer. And it's kind of the same thing. Your life is going to have painful shit go down. It just does. But if you don't do the work to understand the lesson, you don't get to heal it, and you miss the wisdom, right? You miss the gems.
It's so hard though, that's a lot of shit to unpack. Very similar to, your partner at the time, but the same when I often share my story. It's just out there, right? But like I often share about, the drug abuse and the suicide attempt and just everything. It's when you're 7 years old and, your mom is going in and out of prison and is, wasted all the time. Your 7-year-old self doesn't know how to process that emotional trauma, so it gets stored somehow. And then you end up building a pattern on that. But even as an adult, like I still catch myself, I literally just caught myself with my boyfriend the other day where I was like, hey, sorry, I wasn't able to really effectively communicate. I should have stopped when I felt a triggered emotion come up. And instead I kept going in a conversation that led to, of course, nowhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's hard even as an adult, man. I'm 36 and I'm like, I feel like I should get some of this shit down, but it's never ending work.
Oh, honey. I say this when I start working with people and I start coaching them. I said, this work is deep. You have to want this. Like, you're going to have to do the work because it's actionable. When we'll talk and we'll unpack, and look, you do have to understand your history. Like you said, it's like we have to look at where we came from. We're not going to go back and relive history, but we have to understand the roots of where it comes from. Like a lot of our patterning, how we saw love, like, right? If we saw mom and dad in a dysfunctional version of love, or a codependent or an abusive, that went into our system. So love is going to have a lot of what is not love in it. And so we're going to play that shit out with our partners. And the thing is, that's not bad or wrong. That's how we learn it. So if we're able to do the work, and like you said, Danny, it's like, I'm sorry, honey, like I just fucked up. That's okay. Like, we are not meant to be perfect. Like, let's take that pressure off. If we can be aware of it and go, ooh, I need to go back into my corner and own that. That's how we build intimacy, right? It's not just like this perfect little pattern. It takes work. It takes breaking things down. It takes forgiveness. It takes resilience. It takes showing up and risking. I think that's why vulnerability is so hard for so many people, because you're going to be stripped away of a lot of your old patterns. And it's scary sometimes.
I want the 5 minute abs version of this.
Oh, honey.
No, I mean,
I hear
I
you.
kid. I totally kid. Yeah, it's interesting. I had this, first off, like just as a side note, I have been dying to talk to you because we've been in orbit for God knows how long. It's just your name has come up, and like I see you online, and we cross on the same schedule, and we're like in the same universe, but yet we've never actually like hung out. So that's the first.
Yeah.
But the second, is I think about it, and I can't wait to like hear. I want to hear your teachings on this. I think about myself as a teacher.
Mhm.
I am a direct birth product of Jason Crandall and Noah. Just like it, just straight up. I learned from them first. So the anatomy is in me, like the cueing is in me, all of that is in me. And one thing that I've shied away from that I'm really stepping into, I've committed to step into is like my story is very powerful. And I think that there is a way to utilize that and the wisdom of my story and how I've gotten to, what's worked in life. And it's not just the movement of asana, that's a part of it, but actually being embodied and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm starting to slowly pull those nuggets out just to, again, not to flaunt, but to maybe spark an inquiry or even, that's it, to spark an inquiry and see where it comes up. And I didn't realize that was actually part of doing the shadow work. Like you make sense of it. And then when you can draw the wisdom from it, that's really where the growth of it begins to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, like you said, yes, and we have been orbiting, and I'm so glad we found a place to land.
Yeah.
That's the gift. And because having been a YogaWorks teacher, I've been a teacher trainer since 2006, and I've mentored in the professional program. And when I mentor other yoga teachers, I definitely bring in, look, we'll go over the anatomy. I really, having been a dancer, I understand the anatomy, and I love the, breaking down the component parts and all the ways of understanding asana, because I think it is important. And I consider myself an alignment teacher. At the same time, what I've also learned is we all have such different bodies and experiences and journeys. So we really have to, and I'm sure you are the same way, we have to modify that alignment. If you're a man or a woman, what age you are, like all of those things, we have to factor into that. So I think the energetic alignment is so important. And the more that we go through our own process and the more that we understand and heal and own where we feel separated or where we feel disconnected or triggered, then we embody that and we can bring it through our teaching. It's not like we're even trying to bring it in. It just moves. It's like a channel that opens. So the asana is a way to kind of deliver or plant those seeds of the philosophy or the healing part of or the medicine of what yoga brings, in a way that comes through our own journey. And I think that's what makes a teacher so relatable, because it's authentic. It's not like you're trying to bust something out. It's just coming through you because you know how healing and how heart opening it's been in your own life and your own process. And that's what I always cherish in teachers that I resonate with personally.
So this is something that you bring in can you give me some examples of how you bring in some of the shadow work in your teachings and even in your, not the coaching, because that's like a whole like thing in itself, but maybe like when you're working with other teachers and mentoring, how you bring in, the shadow.
Yeah. Look, I just started I'm going to give myself a little plug because I'm really proud of myself. Last year, I created an 8-week coaching journey, because when I was working with Mona all those years ago, Mona Miller, we used to have group. And so in this group setting, it was so powerful to be in community with other people that were going through struggles and that were sharing their stories, and we were able to hold space, and it gave us permission to break shame and to be seen and to see other people. So I created this 8-week coaching journey last year, and we did it on Zoom online, but it was really powerful, and I created a whole e-workbook with it and the whole thing. But the first weekend is something that whether you're a yoga teacher or not, the first weekend was addressing the imposter syndrome, and a lot of people, when they're really honest, they're like, I feel like I'm an imposter. And that's when we get stuck in our identity versus our authenticity. So if I'm working, mentoring yoga teachers, if they're feeling like I'm scared to speak my truth or wherever that fear is, I'm like, well, let's go right toward it. Let's understand, let's unpack. What is that fear saying? And usually, it goes underneath that. Like, I don't feel like I'm worthy enough. I feel like my value is outside. I'm like, okay, well, that's understandable, because that's all over. It's all over social media. It's all over the world. It's like you need to outsource your worth to be a valuable person, and we got to insource it. So we got to flip that lens. And so it's a process of uncovering it, listening to it, talking with it. Right. I do a lot of writing work too. So when you can write, you can express some of those fear voices that are coming up and what it's teaching you, because there's a lesson in every struggle. And when we can strip away, some of that and unpack some of that old stuff and plant new seeds, it's like you're pulling a weed that you've been carrying, and planting new seeds to grow something new. That they can happen at the same time, but it takes effort. It's like when we talk about abhyasa, it's like the effort, and the surrender part is like not giving up, but it's giving over to a new way of seeing, thinking, and feeling, and it gets you back into your authenticity, and then you're going to feel more confident in stepping into that space, because you're not going to give a shit if people judge you. I shouldn't say that. We all care a little bit, but you're not going to take we're going to do a little bit, but I'm not going to stop being who I am, because I know people are going to judge me. They're going to love me. I mean, people are going to love me and people are going to judge me. And like, as long as I'm staying true to me, that's on me. But if I take on all of their stuff, I can't show up and do the work that I'm here to do, because I'm going to be so caught up in other people's opinions. I won't even know who the hell I am. So that's unpacking that shadow work and instead of going out in to get our worth and value, we have to learn to go, going in out. So we maintain and keep developing and living our life, whatever we're doing, from our authentic truth.
I've had, a few moments where there we'll call them excavations, right? Where there's been like some big stuff that's just like, you have that like, whoa moment of like, oh my God, I believed this and that's a lie. And you kind of have like that, just like that, it's like a spark of illumination, you're just like, okay, I get it. I see that, and I often waver, I often find myself, like me personally, and I'm sure anyone listening to the show, like where you're just like, you're on it for like, whatever many months, you're just like, this is great. I'm awesome. I'm getting to excavate my truth and da, 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 da. And then just like a big crash and burn. And it feels like I have to start over sometimes. Just, is that normal in shadow work?
I don't think anything's normal. I think I love when people say, try to get back to normal. I'm like, normal was not working. Let's fucking release normal.
Yeah.
Let's be, weird, different, unique. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything, but what I hear, what you're saying too, Danny, is that to be expected? Sure. Cause we're not fucking perfect. And we really haven't lost it. We're now stepping into a new understanding of it. Right. And so when we fall off the train or we crash and burn, it's just another level or another opportunity for me to practice like, ooh, okay, that's my, my negative self-worth, or that's my imposter syndrome, or that's my self-beat is a big one for people, because self-beat, when that comes in, means that our shame is up. And we have a lot of shame and guilt that has been woven into our version of what love is. So to unweave it, there's no fast track. It's like the practice is like, ooh, I fell off the train and my shame is up because I suck, because I should know better, right? So it's like, let's rinse these shame voices, the self-beat, so that we can get to what's the truth underneath. And if I can learn to listen to that truth and then love those messy bits of who I am, then I can love the parts that I have deemed ugly or unworthy. And I get to actually take that in as a power that I have. I'm not going to avoid or belittle the parts of myself that I have deemed unlovable for a long, long time. So I think it's an opportunity to get more clear with your inner critic and that self-beat. That's an old tape. And it's just another level and another opportunity to work with it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you said it's another opportunity to work with it. Every time I do fall off, I mean, I'm pretty, here's the thing about Danny is he's uncensored. So, when I'm up, and when I'm down, I'm down, and and it's written all over everywhere. I'm pretty open and honest about all of it. Depression, all the things. Like there's just no point in me hiding it, because that's boring. And also a waste of my energy. I feel like every time I do go through like a cycle, where I'm like feeling great, and then, I either overwork myself, or for a lot of it for me isn't the bypassing of it. It's just that I end up working too much. I don't give myself a day off, and then I get tired, and then I get hungry, and then I get, cranky. And then, so it's just easier for me to, kind of set off like a time bomb, and then there goes a big crash, and then I burn out, and then I start all over again. Normally I feel great. And I feel like every time I do it, it's like a 10% learning. It's like, okay, I can actually feel it coming. And so I'll put it into awareness, like just out loud, like, oh, you need a day off. Okay. You need a couple of days off. Actually, you need no internet, nothing else, so that you can just process and be with Danny versus being pulled in every single direction. And some of the stuff that like we hear, like this stuff isn't new. You know what I mean? Like this stuff has been told over and over and over and over, but you don't know until you know. And you don't know until you go through it. Or, sometimes you have to go through it. So, some people learn on the first try. Other people learn on the 100th and 12th try.
I've very rarely found anyone who gets it on the first try, but God bless them if they do.
It's hard. Mia, it is hard.
This shit is hard. It is. And I think it's so important to name that and call that out, because I think sometimes, and I know you hear this too, people are like, oh, social media brings up my triggers and I start to self-peak because everyone looks like they have it all together. I'm like, no, they don't. No, everyone's struggling. And, we don't want to put all our struggles out on social media because that's just going to be like too much sharing. But it's a balance, right? And it's so easy to look at other people are doing it and they were getting it together. It's like, you know what? It's like keeping our focus on our own lane, because we're all processing it and getting through it in our own way. And, to me, that's, we talk about our spiritual practice. To me, isn't just about sitting in meditation and going to, enlightened states of being. It's getting down into my animal and getting down into what we call the shadow, because I love the animal part of who I am. I do not want to lose that animal part. I want to work constructively with that animal energy. That's why I physically rinse, because I have a fire breathing dragon inside of me. And if that fire breathing dragon doesn't have a way to rinse and release, and then I can keep my fire and my power without destroying myself, because I totally hear you. It's like, I'm taking on too much. I'm doing too much. And I think a lot of us who are drawn to being yoga teachers, sometimes we overgive and overdo, and it's a fine line. And, and it's all about practice, right? Because we can talk about the philosophy till the cows come home, but we have to practice it. We have to embody it. And it's not a linear path. It's circular, and it's going to swim around. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I keep hearing the point of, like just the people that, I see it so much on Instagram. I talk about Instagram all the time on the show, but I really do see just people just like all the time. It's just like peace and love and peace and love. And I got to call it bullshit, because I don't think that person's just always peace and love and peace and love and peace and love. Like, I don't think that that's how the world works, or even how we work as humans, where we have a beautiful array of emotions. Now, whether you don't want to, whether you're choosing not to share your shadow, that's cool. Like that, you don't have to do that. That's not for everybody to do. You might want to work that privately, But I do think that it's problematic to have someone just be like, yeah, just put positive vibes out there. Just put positive vibes out there. Like, why don't you sit with your sadness too and get to know it, and then maybe take your sadness on a walk to somewhere. And if it happens to be positive, great. And if it doesn't for a little bit, also great.
Yeah, I so am with you on that. I think good vibes only, if you know anything about me, is just a recipe for depression and anxiety. Because when you tell me good vibes only, what happened to the bad vibes? Why did we call them bad? This is the problem. That's judgment. Those bad vibes are usually hurt. They're usually sad. There's usually pain. There's usually anger. So if you tell me I need to be good vibes only, that means I need to be up. And if I need to be up all the time, that means I can't sit in my own sadness and learn from that. It's like, give me a lobotomy. I think that is such a recipe for depression. And, being up all the time is not realistic. It's just like, we're going to go through pain. When you're sitting, with my mom was in a stroke, in a coma, and I had to take her off feeding tubes before she passed away. That fucking shit hurts. And don't tell, but I also know, being with someone who goes to the other side and putting my dogs to sleep in my arms when they pass, there is a gift in that. And I do not want to lose the capacity to be with that pain either, because it's part of my humanity. And if my spirit is here to learn about being in this human world, I better embrace all of it. And if I can't embrace all my vibes, I can't embrace all of who I am. And I don't have my authenticity if I need to be up all the time.
Yeah, that, and it takes away your capacity to experience that, to witness someone else's experience of that. It takes away your capacity of, sitting with someone else who's having to pull feeding tubes out, or having whatever, it is like it takes away that. And I think that's, if you're, I don't know, for me, if you're in the work and you're doing the work, one of the main things, the biggest things that you can do for someone while they're going through any type of process is just to be a witness, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to sit back and not have to manipulate or shift or change or offer. Like, this is where you get to use your 2 ears and your 2 eyes, and you just sit back and witness on that one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But if you take away from feeling the sadness and feeling the entire array of it, whatever it is, you lose that capacity to be there with that person. Because if you're pushing away your sadness, you're not going to be able to sit there with someone who's being sad. You're going to be like, well, that's something that I avoid, so I'm going to avoid this.
Yeah. I'm so with you on that too. It's like, I think it's a difference between empathy and sympathy. The empathy is, I can sit in myself while you sit with you, and we can sit together, and I can support you and love you. I do not need to fix you or heal you, but I can hold you and support. Sympathy is very codependent. It's like, I need to feel for you. I need to fix you. I want you to feel better. But at the root of it, it's really selfish, because it's like, I want you to feel better, so I feel better about myself. So I don't have to feel the pain that's coming up. So we just have to get over it. Where it's like, no, if I can sit in like you said, in my own sadness and tenderness, right? I can be with you while you're in your sadness and tenderness, and just witness and hold space. And that's all, that's a powerful place of healing, because it allows someone to be in their truth without trying to change it, manipulate it. And that's where, the healing happens.
I keep saying I'm unlocking like this next level of teaching. Like, I've been teaching now for a little over 10 years, and which means like my ears are barely wet. Which, and it's a short way of saying I don't know shit.
Well,
but yeah, it's true. You really don't. I don't think that really you really know anything in teaching until about 20 years. That's really when it starts. That's just my own personal opinion.
Yeah.
But I feel like I'm unlocking this like new side of teaching, where before I felt like I had to say a lot of stuff in the room, and that's what I did. That's, I learned all the things. So I had to like put out all the information out there, and then what I realized was, Janet Stone actually said this to me. She's like, Danny, there is so much information out there. And she's like, and people are starving for wisdom, and it really just shifted. It really shifted the way that I offer a couple things to guide, let the students do the rest, let them have their experience, and just be there fully present, not in your own shit, not in whatever, just be fully there in the room. And I'll tell you what, Mia, ever since I've started to do just a little bit, just little hints of it, it's just, you could feel, that the practice is a bit more powerful, or it's just a little more juicy. There's a little more sweetness in there.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing too, that's really the direction I go with my teaching. And that's the kind of teacher that I really resonate with. It's like, yeah, give me the alignment, or give me the information, and then let me steep in the wisdom. But the wisdom, sometimes it comes through your words, and it's your presence. And that's something you can't fake. It just can't. Like you said, it takes 20 years. I do think there's something about aging, and I do think there's something about going through some real life shit that just gives you the capacity. I feel the same way. It's like, who I am as a teacher now is so different than I was 15 years ago. And, I've gone through some life, and I teach from that place, and I'm just, you can't fake it. You can feel that when a teacher holds that space. And even now, teaching online, I'm back teaching with YogaWorks. I teach at Try Yoga here in London. I can feel that connection to my students, and I can feel that sense of like holding the space, even though it's a virtual, experience. And because energy doesn't lie. And like Janet said, is like, people want the wisdom, and it allows them space to steep in their own wisdom and let it come through their own process.
Have you noticed that your teaching, I guess your teaching online has shifted at all in regards to like the shadow work? I know you're still, you integrate this in your normal, your normal day-to-day teaching, I guess, studio stuff. Have you shifted it in any way because everything's online?
No, not at all. Like, I love it. I really feel so connected, but I feel really, I have to say, I just feel really confident as a teacher now. I show up even the days when I'm tired, or even today I taught at YogaWorks and I was just tired because I see coaching clients. I see like usually 3 to 4 clients a day, and then I teach a class too. But that's okay. Yeah. I'm like, I'm just going to show up and bring what I can. And it was beautiful. It's just it's alchemy. If you allow yourself to just show up in your authenticity and everyone shows up in theirs, there's this beautiful alchemy that every time, it's trusting that it'll just unfold the way that it's supposed to. So no, if anything, I'm just more softening and surrendering into the experience and really, really enjoying it, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. I feel for me, and I'm totally, this could be projection overruled at any given point, but I feel like since I've gone online, it's given me permission to be even more real. Granted, the state of the world too, like I just don't give a shit anymore. Like I really don't. Like, I'm not going to wake up today and try to pretend that I'm like happy. Sometimes I'll walk in and be like, you guys, I'm having a really shitty day and I really need to teach some yoga. So we're going to teach. And has anyone ever experienced a shitty day before? What is that like in your body? Okay, move. Like, whatever it is, without being like, hey guys, let's talk about my problems.
Yeah. There's a fine line. Yeah. I hear you.
What I really like to do, Mia, is just go in and dump all my problems onto my students and have them hold space for me, and then I just leave. It's great.
Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It's this new method that I'm branding.
I love it. Just dump your shadow work.
No, but since everything is online, and I'm teaching out of my home, I feel just a little more comfortable to fully be me in that fine line. I can still be a professional without having to weaponize anything. You know what I mean? Like I don't have to weaponize my emotions or my experience or my triggers or any of that, like by all means, but I can come in and bring that out. And because I'm at home, I don't know why, it feels like it's just a bit different. The way that I speak in class these days is just a bit, I speak to a lot of permission these days. And it's probably because I've given myself more permission these days.
Yeah. I love that too, Danny, because like you said, you're feeling more at home, or you're in your home, and just, it's kind of like going back to too. It's like, the world's changed. Things have shifted. What we value and how we put ourselves out there, that's changed too. And it's like, there's not as much room for bullshit. It's like, bring your authenticity. And if I'm having, I teach from that place too. I don't, maybe come out and say I'm having a shitty day. I could say I'm having a hard time, or whatever it is, however it authentically moves through you. Yeah, I'm having a hard time. I remember one time I'm like, I'm really missing my dad, and it's hard. And I'm just missing my community. I'm in my heart is tender. And like, there were tears in my eyes, but my community loves that. It's like, I'm not going to sit there and like, yeah, life's great, because it's not right now. And it doesn't mean that there isn't. So I love Santosha, because I think, but I can still find joy in the tenderness and the joy in that this is all part of the process. So I totally resonate. I love teachers who bring their authenticity, who aren't trying to like teach in a breathy voice and have everything calm. I'm like, no, come from your truth. And I think people resonate with that.
You mean you don't love this, Mia?
I do not.
Welcome
love
to class.
We're now going to. Oh no, I can't even.
One of my missions as a teacher this year is actually to, there has been something that has gotten me from, suicidal drugs and all that stuff to now yoga and, transformation, whatever you want to call it. And I'm trying to synthesize what that is. I'm trying to synthesize those pieces. And I know some of it's yoga, some of it's meditation, some of it's breath work. Others parts of it is none of that at all. Like, it's just that some of it was food. And a part of it is, I keep thinking about like what I'm going to call this thing. And I know it's trauma informed, but it's not trauma yoga. And I also know that it's like, vulnerability work, but it's not vulnerability yoga. It's something else. And, a good friend actually has been just saying, she's like, you need to read this shadow book, because I think that that's going to give you, a little more insight as to, to your process from struggling to surrendering. And that's what it hit me. I was like, oh my God, it's literally, it's from struggle to surrender.
Yeah.
And what got me there was inadvertently, I was doing some shadow work without knowing that I was doing shadow work, and I didn't have labels and I didn't have the vernacular to call it what it was. But man, I'm telling you, it's so potent and so powerful. And when you have the space, like the capacity for that space to see it in action, it is like superpower. It literally is like superpower where you're like, whoa, here comes the emotion. Something else that is not this part of me is, that I'm in another place in time right now, but that's coming up. I need to pause that. I need to pause and get to know that a little bit so that I can continue living where I'm at in this moment.
Yeah.
I'm trying my hardest to share a little more in class on anatomy.
Yeah. The anatomy, the alignment, it's important to a degree, but it's certainly not everything. And I think, kind of circling back on that shadow work and, understanding our triggers. I always say triggers take us into a time travel, usually a trance, and to break that trance, it's not always easy, but the more that we can break that trance and come back into the present and do, the processing, whatever that is to get you back. But at the same time, understand the struggle and learn the lesson, embody the wisdom. And I'm making it sound real fucking easy, and it's not, because those triggers.
Right. Good luck, everybody.
I just put that a lot into, this has been my work. I would recommend if, a book that my teacher wrote called Invisible Warfare. It's brilliant. She's passed on 11 years ago, but there's so much depth in there about shame and guilt and addiction. And, her thing she used to say is everyone has addict energy. I'm not going to say everyone's an addict, but the addict energy is anything we do to escape our feelings, because a lot of us were not taught how to feel our feelings. We confuse it with being emotional. And when we have a feeling that's stuck in a spin of self-beaten judgment, it spins and we become it's emotional. And that's why emotions get a bad rap, because we spin. And I was like, well, that's scary. But if you learn how to rinse those feelings, to move them through, then the feelings are they're not necessarily facts, right? But if you believe them to be true without understanding them, you deem them as real, and that creates your reality. And that we keep attracting this back, and it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So we have to really get to the root, we have to understand and feel at the roots of some of the belief systems that we have established about ourselves and about other people. There's a lot there. Right. I threw a lot out there.
Right. Yeah. There is a lot out there for sure. And I think that it is super important that we invite that into, whether you're a practitioner or whether you're a teacher or whatever it is, I think it's just a really cool opportunity to get to know a different side of yourself and to not have to pass that on to anybody else,
Yeah, it's so true, because history, as we see, this is another deep dive, I'm not going to go there too, but history does repeat itself if we don't do the inner work. It just does. And we're seeing, we're seeing so much with the racial reckoning. History is repeating, we've got to break it down. We have to unpack, we have to decolonize, we have to deprogram. And to me, this is yoga, right? Yoga is about deprogramming, because how are we integrated? How are we in union if I have disowned a part of who I am because it's difficult, I don't like it, I don't understand it? Yeah, it's hard, but that's the part you got to go own and retrieve and integrate. And like you said, it becomes my superpower, because nobody can take that away from me. It's mine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah, so good. Well, I look forward to your 5-minute shadow work that you're going to develop, because that's all I want.
I want to work on that 5-minute shadow healing.
Please.
It's going to make me a billionaire.
This 36, 37 years of shadow work is bullshit.
Oh, you're going to love this. I'm going to tell you that Mona used to say, you're going to get it when you realize you're never going to get it. So stop trying to get it. Just be in it. And I was like, man.
Right.
Stop trying to get it.
I feel seen and attacked.
And loved. Aww.
I'm so glad that we finally got to land in this special place. I love, having amazing people like you that keep it just so real and raw on the show. And the listeners, I know people listening out there enjoy this, because it is just a conversation that so many people want to have and don't.
Yeah, I hear you. And I thank you so much for having me. And I'm so glad we made it happen. 2021 made it work. Yeah, finally, right? Love it.
Well, I appreciate your time on the show today, Mia. Until the next Seeker and Sage, this is Mia and Danny saying peace out.
Peace out. Thank you.